She poured her last cup of rice into the hands of a man she had never seen before. A dirty, broken man sleeping under a bridge in Lagos. She did not know that by morning her entire life would never be the same again. The night was loud. Lagos never sleeps. Buses were honking. Generators were roaring. The air smelled of pepper soup and exhaust fumes. And somewhere far in the distance, a woman was crying. That woman was Miriam. She had been crying since she counted her money that evening. 350 naira. That was everything she had left after selling rice and stew by the roadside near Oshodi Market for 11 hours straight. 350 naira. Not enough for transport home. Not enough for dinner. Barely enough for anything in a city like Lagos where bread alone costs more than kindness. Miriam was 26 years old, and she carried life on her back the way a snail carries its shell. Heavy, permanent, and completely impossible to put down. Her mother was sick in Asaba. Her younger brother, Jerry, was writing his WEC exams and needed money for handouts and extra lessons. And Miriam, this small, quiet woman with calloused hands and tired eyes, was holding all of it together with nothing but her giant pot of rice and a burning determination that refused to die, no matter how many times Lagos tried to crush it. She wrapped up her leftover food in a nylon bag, counted her coins one last time, and started walking. She was going to find somewhere to sleep near the market because the last bus had gone, and trekking to her one-room apartment in Mushin at that hour was not something she was willing to do alone. That was when she saw him. He was lying near the underpass beneath a bridge not far from the market. At first, Miriam thought he was dead. She stopped walking and stood very still, watching his chest. It moved. Slowly. He was alive, but just barely. His clothes were torn and black with dirt. His feet were bare and cracked. His face, even in the orange glow of the streetlights, showed a man who had been through something terrible. Not just poverty. Something that had broken him from the inside. Most people in Lagos would have kept walking. That is not cruelty. That is survival. Lagos teaches you very quickly that if you stop for every problem, you will never move forward in your own life. But Miriam had not learned that lesson yet, or perhaps she had learned a different one, that ignoring pain, any pain, has a way of following you home. She knelt beside him. "Brother," she said softly. He stirred. His eyes opened slowly, red and glassy like someone who had not slept properly in days. He looked at her with confusion, like he could not understand why a stranger was kneeling over him. Miriam asked. He did not answer. He just stared at her. She opened her nylon bag and brought out the leftover rice. It was not much, maybe enough for one small plate. But she divided it anyway, the way she always divided things, the way her mother had taught her. You always have enough to share if you believe you do. She handed him the larger portion. He took it with shaking hands and ate without a word. And Miriam sat beside him on the cold concrete and ate her own small share, listening to the city roar around them, watching a man slowly come back to life one spoonful at a time. Before she left, she pressed 200 naira into his palm. It was more than half of what she had. She did not know why. She just felt that she could not walk away without doing it. She never got his name that night. He never told her. She walked away into the Lagos darkness, and she did not look back. If you are watching this story right now, please pause for just a second. What time is it where you are, and what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comment section, because people from all over the world are watching this, and it is such a beautiful thing to see. And if this story is already pulling at your heart, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear a story like this today. Now, let us continue. His name was Francis. He was 32 years old. He was not a beggar. He was not homeless by birth or by laziness. He was a man who had been burned so many times by the people he loved most that he had simply stopped trusting the world. 3 months before that night under the bridge, Francis had been a different person entirely. He had worked as a site engineer on a major construction project in Abuja, a government housing scheme that paid well and came with the kind of title that made his mother proud. He drove a good car. He rented a clean apartment in Maitama. He had a fiancée named Lisa, a beautiful woman he had been with for 4 years and was planning to marry before the dry season ended. But Lisa had a secret. Actually, Lisa had 2 secrets. The first was that she had been seeing his closest friend, a man called Desmond. For almost the entire 4 years they were together. The second secret, the one that cut deepest, was that the apartment Francis was living in, the one he thought he was renting under his own name, was actually registered under Desmond's company. Lisa and Desmond had planned it together from the beginning. While Francis worked overtime on construction sites to save money for their wedding, Desmond was using Francis's savings account details, which Lisa had quietly copied, to transfer money into a joint investment fund. Francis's money, Francis's future, gone. When Francis discovered it, he did not shout, he did not break things. He sat in that apartment for 3 days and did not eat. On the 4th day, he packed 1 bag, left his car keys on the table, and walked out of Abuja. He did not know where he was going. He just started walking. And somehow the road brought him to Lagos, which is where every broken Nigerian eventually ends up, either to be reborn or to disappear entirely. He had been sleeping under that bridge for 11 days when Miriam found him. He did not eat the rice she gave him and feel better immediately. Life does not work like that. But something happened in him when she pressed that 200 naira into his palm. Something cracked open, not in a painful way. In the way a seed cracks open just before it begins to grow. He sat there long after she had gone, holding that money in his fist. And for the first time in weeks, he cried. Not from pain, from something else. From the strange, unexpected warmth of being seen by someone who had no reason to see him. The next morning, Francis made a decision. He was not going to stay under that bridge. He was not going to disappear. He was going to work. He did not have his engineering certificates with him. Those were back in Abuja, in the apartment he had walked out of. He did not have references. He did not have a clean shirt or a respectable appearance. But he had hands, strong hands that knew how to carry weight and build things. And Lagos is a city that will always find work for hands that are willing. He found a construction site near Oshodi, not far from where Miriam sold her rice. He asked the site foreman for work as a general laborer. The foreman looked him up and down, dirty clothes, hollow face, and almost said no. But there was something in Francis's eyes, a steadiness, a seriousness that most laborers did not have. The foreman hired him for 1,500 naira a day, cash in hand. Francis worked. He carried cement blocks. He mixed concrete. He did not complain. He ate once a day and saved every naira. Within 1 week, he had enough for a haircut, a clean second-hand shirt from a Oshodi bend-down market, and a small room in a Face Me I Face You compound in Mushin. And every morning, before the sun was fully up, he walked past Miriam's rice-selling spot. He did not stop. He did not stand up. He watched her from a distance, this small woman who moved so fast with her pots and her ladle, this woman whose laugh carried across the whole street, when something struck her funny, and he felt something strange and gentle begin to grow in the place where everything had been destroyed. He wanted to say thank you, but something held him back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the feeling that a man who had been reduced to sleeping under a bridge was not yet a man worth meeting properly. So he watched, and he waited, and every day, without knowing it, Miriam sold her rice and laughed her loud laugh and held his whole broken world together just by being exactly who she was. On the 14th day it rained, not a small Lagos drizzle. A real, violent Lagos rain that comes without warning and turns the roads into rivers within minutes. Miriam's rice stand was just a low wooden table under a plastic canopy, and the canopy was not strong. The rain came sideways. The rain came sideways. Her pot nearly fell. Her nylon bag soaked through. and she was alone because her small assistant, a teenager named Kenny, had gone to buy sachets of water and not come back when the rain started. Francis was walking past when it happened. He did not think. He ran to her. He grabbed the tent pole that was bending and held it. He pulled her pot back from the edge of the table and steadied it with both hands. He used his body to shield her bags of rice from the worst of the water, standing there in the pouring rain, getting completely soaked while she scrambled to wrap her things in the dry nylon she kept underneath the table. When the rain began to slow, they both stood there, drenched and breathing hard. Miriam looked at him. His face was familiar. Something about it. She could not place it immediately, and then her eyes dropped to his hands. Strong, rough, calloused hands, and the memory hit her like a wave. The bridge, the leftover rice, the 200 naira. "You," she said. He nodded. She stared at him. His face was cleaner now. His hair was cut. He wore a construction worker's vest over a plain white shirt. His boots were muddy and real. He looked like a man who was rebuilding himself with his bare hands. And something about that, something about the quiet dignity of it, made her chest ache in a way she had not felt in a very long time. "I have been meaning to say thank you," he said. "For the rice, for the money," she said, not unkindly. "Because I watched you," he said, not in a strange way. I walk past here every morning." Miriam was quiet for a moment. And she did something that she did not fully understand. She reached under her table, pulled out a small covered bowl, and handed it to him. "You are still working," she said. He tried to protest. She would not hear it. That was how it started. Not with romance, not with flirting. With rice, with lunch in a covered bowl, with a man who had been broken quietly, rebuilding himself in the shadow of a woman who did not even know she was the reason he had decided to stay. He came back the next day and paid for his food. Miriam almost refused the money. He insisted. He came back again the day after that, and the day after that. They began to talk, small things at first. The rain, the bad roads, the price of tomatoes going up again. But small things have a way of opening into bigger things when two people are paying real attention to each other. He told her his name was Francis. He told her he was a construction worker. He did not tell her anything else yet. He told her he's a construction worker. He did not tell her Rizet. Not about Abuja. Not about who he had been before Lagos broke him open and left him under a bridge. Some truths, he felt, needed to wait until he was whole enough to speak them. She told him her name was Miriam. She told him about her mother in Asaba, about Jerry's exams, about how she had been selling rice since she was 16 years old and how she was tired but not broken. She told him about her dream, a proper restaurant, not a big one, just a small, clean place with real tables and a menu written on a chalkboard and enough space that she could cook without sweating into the food. Francis listened the way people rarely listen anymore, completely still, completely present, his whole body turned toward her words like a plant turning toward sunlight. One evening, as she was packing up, he asked if he could walk her to the bus stop. She said yes. He carried her heavy pot on his shoulder, as if it weighed nothing, and walked beside her through the noisy Oshodi evening. They talked the whole way. She missed her bus on purpose, just to finish the conversation. She caught herself doing it and laughed, and he laughed too, and the sound of the two of them laughing together on that dusty road felt like something that had been waiting a long time to happen. Weeks passed. He walked her to the bus stop every evening. He ate lunch at her table every afternoon. He was always there when the rain threatened her canopy. He fixed the wobbling leg of her table one Saturday morning without being asked, kneeling in the dirt with the small wrench he had brought from the site. He bought her a new plastic canopy from his savings and set it up himself at 5 a.m. before she even arrived. Miriam noticed everything. She was not a woman who missed things. She noticed how carefully he did each thing, how much intention within his hands, how he always made sure she was okay before he was comfortable. She noticed the way he sometimes went quiet and looked at a faraway place. And she did not push him. She understood that some people carried storms inside them that needed time to settle. She was falling. She knew it. She was not afraid of knowing it. What she was afraid of was not knowing who he really was, because this man, this quiet, gentle, strong man who fixed her table and brought her leftover suya on Friday evenings and listened to her like she was the most interesting person in all of Lagos. This man felt like a secret she had not yet been allowed to fully read. One night, after she had packed up and he had walked her to the bus stop and they had stood there longer than usual, neither wanting to say goodnight, he took her hand. Not in a romantic rush. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone handling something precious that had been damaged before. "I need to tell you something," he said. The bus stop was loud around them, but between them it was very quiet. He told her everything. About Abuja, about the engineering work, about Lisa and Desmond and the 4 years that had been a lie, and the money that had been taken, and the walk away from everything he had built. He told her about the bridge, about the 11 days of nothing. He told her she was the first person who had shown him kindness in so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like, and that her rice and her 200 naira had been the thing that pulled him back from a very dark edge. His voice broke once. He stopped and pressed his lips together and looked away. She did not say anything. She just held his hand more firmly. "I am right now," he said. She looked at him for a long time. "Then that is enough," she said. He looked at her like she had said something no one had ever said to him before. And maybe no one had. They began to see each other in the way that 2 people who have both been hurt before see each other, slowly, carefully, with no pretense and no performance. He did not take her to expensive places because he did not have expensive places to take her. They ate fried yam by the roadside near Mushin. They walked along the Lagos Lagoon on Sunday evenings. They sat on plastic chairs outside her building and talked until the generator went off, and they had to continue in the dark. She brought him groundnut soup when he was tired. He surprised her with a second-hand cookbook he found in a pile at Balogun Market because she had once mentioned, just once, that she wanted to learn new recipes for her restaurant dream. She kept that book on her table like it was made of gold. But Lagos is a city that does not let happiness settle too easily. Because just when things begin to feel safe, that is when the ground shakes. It was a Tuesday. Miriam was setting up her table when a white SUV pulled up on the street beside her. The window came down. A man leaned out, well-dressed, clean, the kind of face that belonged in an air-conditioned office. He looked at her the way people look at things they think they own. The man said. Miriam looked at him. The man sighed slowly. It was not a kind smile. "Tell him Desmond is looking for him," he said. The window went up. The car drove away. Miriam stood very still for a long moment, and then she packed up her things, told Kenny to watch the stand, and walked to the construction site. She found Francis on the scaffold, 3 floors up, carrying a steel rod. She waited at the bottom. When he saw her face, he came down immediately. She told him what had happened. Every word. The color changed in Francis's face. Not fear. Something colder. Something that had been sleeping and had now woken up. "He found me," Francis said quietly. Miri asked. Francis was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that changed everything. "He needs me," he said. "The project in Abuja is in trouble. The new engineer they hired after me made errors in the structural design. The building is at risk of collapse. My former company has been looking for me for 2 months. They need my original calculations, my logs. Desmond, he works for the ministry that approved the project." Miriam stared at him. "Not him," Francis said. "The people who will live in those buildings." She looked at him for a very long moment. She saw what kind of man he was in that moment clearly, fully, without any shadow or question. A man who, even after everything that had been done to him, could not let innocent people be hurt because of his own pain. She said, "I need to go back to Abuja," he said. She nodded slowly. Something tightened in her chest, but she held it steady. He took both her hands. "I am coming back," he said. She did not cry. He left for Abuja 2 days later. Miriam waited. She sold her rice. She called her mother. She helped Jerry with money for his exam fees. She did not sit in self-pity because she was not built for it, but she missed him. Quietly, steadily, the way you miss someone who has become part of your daily rhythm without you fully noticing, and then suddenly they are gone and every familiar thing feels slightly incomplete. He called her every evening without you fully noticing, and then suddenly they are gone and every familiar thing feels slightly incomplete. His voice always calm, always real, no pretense. He told her about the work, about the stress of it, about the meetings with the ministry officials and the long nights reviewing calculations. He told her that facing Desmond across a conference table had been one of the hardest things he had ever done, not because of anger, but because he had to choose in real time to be better than what had been done to him. He chose it. He did the work. He submitted the corrected structural reports. The building was saved. The housing project resumed. 300 families who would never know his name would one day move into homes that stood safely because of a man who had been sleeping under a bridge in Lagos 4 months earlier. Desmond tried to apologize in the parking lot after the final meeting. Francis looked at him for a long moment and said only 3 words, and walked away. Not because he was not hurt, not because everything was forgiven and forgotten, but because carrying the weight of that betrayal was not something he was willing to do for one more day. He left it in that parking lot like a bag he no longer needed to carry. The ministry, once they saw the quality of his work, offered him a contract, a real one. With his name, he called Miriam from the steps of the ministry building, and for the first time in a long time, his voice sounded like a man who had remembered who he was. "I am coming home," he said. Home. He had said Lagos. He had said home. Miriam pressed the phone against her chest after the call ended and stood in the middle of her small Mushin room and laughed until she cried. He came back on a Friday evening. She was just packing up her table when she saw him walking down the road carrying a small bag, in clean clothes, his face full of something that looked like peace. She left her table half-packed and walked to meet him. And right there on that noisy road in Oshodi, with buses honking and hawkers shouting and the whole mad city roaring around them, he opened his arms and she walked into them, and they held on to each other the way people hold on when they have both been lost and found their way back. In the weeks that followed, Francis started working again as a proper engineer. He retrieved his certificates from Abuja. He registered with a firm in Lagos. He did not forget who he had been when he had nothing. He went back to that construction site in Oshodi and bought everyone on the crew a meal from Miriam's stand. All 23 workers, rice and stew and a cold drink each, because those were the men who had given a dirty, hollow-faced stranger a chance when no one else would. He helped Miriam apply for a small business loan. He sat with her every night, going over the application, helping her write the plan for her restaurant. He did not do it for her. He sat beside her and asked her questions and let her find the answers herself, because he knew, the way only someone who has rebuilt themselves truly knows, that there is a kind of strength that only grows when you build your own thing. The loan came through. Not a large amount, but enough to rent a small space in Cerulean. Enough to buy a proper gas cooker and 4 clean tables and to paint the walls the warm orange color that Miriam had been seeing in her mind for 10 years. The day the restaurant opened, Francis stood at the back of the small crowd that had gathered. Neighbors, regular customers from the roadside stand, Kenny, who had grown 3 inches and was now her official waiter, and he watched her stand behind the counter with her ladle in her hand and her orange walls glowing around her, and he felt something that he had thought was gone forever. He felt proud, not of anything he had done, of her, of this woman who had poured her last cup of rice into the hands of a stranger, and in doing so had somehow poured life back into him. She looked across the room and found his eyes. She smiled, not a polite smile. A full, real, enormous smile that reached every part of her face. He smiled back in the same way. But what happened next, nobody in that small restaurant saw coming. Not Kenny, not the neighbors, not even Miriam herself. Francis had been carrying something in his pocket for 3 weeks. A small thing, a heavy thing, something he had saved for quietly, the way he did everything. Without noise, without announcement, without making a performance of the love that had been building in him since the night a woman knelt beside a broken man under a bridge and asked when he had last eaten. He had gone to Tejusho Market on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks earlier, and stood in front of a jewelry stall for 45 minutes, not because he could not decide, but because his hands were shaking so badly he kept putting things down and picking them up again. The woman selling the rings had watched him with patient, knowing eyes and finally said, "You are not choosing a ring. You are choosing courage." He had laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. He bought a simple ring, not flashy, not expensive by the standards of men who had never slept under a bridge. But it was real gold, and it was small and clean and beautiful. And every time he touched it in his pocket over those 3 weeks, he felt something solid and true. He had planned to do it privately. That was what he had told himself. A quiet evening by the lagoon. Just the two of them, nothing dramatic, because Miriam was not a woman who needed spectacle. She was a woman who needed truth, and he had learned that about her the way you learn the most important things, slowly and completely, by simply paying attention. But standing in that restaurant, watching her move through her own dream with her ladle in her hand and her orange walls glowing and her laugh filling every corner of the room, something in him shifted. Something said, "Now?" Not because it was primed, because it was right. He moved through the small crowd slowly. Kenny saw him first, and his eyes went wide. He grabbed the arm of the woman standing next to him. Then that woman grabbed someone else. A quiet ripple moved through the room, person by person, everyone turning, everyone watching. The laughter and the noise falling away like a curtain being slowly drawn back. Miriam was serving a plate of rice to an elderly woman at the corner table when she felt the room change. She looked up and she saw Francis standing in the middle of her restaurant, in the middle of her dream, looking at her with an expression she had never seen on any human face before. Not in movies, not in real life. An expression that was so completely full of her that it made her breath stop. She set the plate down, very carefully. Her hands were already trembling. Francis did not speak immediately. He looked at her for a long moment, the way a man looks at something he cannot believe is real. And then he reached into his pocket. The room went completely silent. Even Lagos seemed to go quiet outside. Even the generators, even the honking, even the city that never stops, it held its breath. He walked to her, slowly, every step deliberate, and when he reached her, he did not drop to one knee immediately. Miriam's eyes were already filling. She nodded. She could barely breathe. She nodded. She could matted. "I asked when you last ate," she whispered. "You fed me," he said. "When you had almost nothing. You fed me." His voice broke slightly. He steadied it. It was not the 200 naira. It was the way you knelt down, the way you looked at me like I was still worth looking at, like I was still a person. You have no idea what that did to me. You have no idea how many times in the months after that, when things were hard and the work was heavy and the shame was loud, I'd forgotten about him up that one moment. Miriam was crying now, silently the way she cried when something was too big for sound. He lowered himself to one knee. A woman near the door gasped. Kenny pressed both hands over his mouth. The elderly woman at the corner table put down her fork and pressed her hand to her chest. Francis opened the small box. The ring caught the light from the orange walls and threw it back in tiny gold pieces. "I came to Lagos with nothing," he said. I had lost everything I thought mattered. I slept under a bridge and I thought that was the end of my story. But you were the beginning. You were always the beginning. The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds. And then Miriam did something no one expected. She did not say yes immediately. She pulled her hands free from his, and for one terrifying moment the whole room froze. Kenny actually grabbed the doorframe, and then she dropped to her own knees right there on the floor of her restaurant, face to face with him. And she took his face in both her trembling hands and she said, I found you under a bridge. I will find you anywhere. Yes. The room erupted. Kenny knocked over a chair. The elderly woman at the corner table was weeping openly. Someone started clapping, and then everyone was clapping, and someone else was ululating the way only Nigerians ululate at moments of pure joy, that high, piercing, glorious sound that means the heart is too full for ordinary noise. Frances put the ring on Miriam's finger right there on the floor of the restaurant, and she looked at it on her hand, this hand that had carried pots and stirred rice and pressed 200 naira into a stranger's palm, and she laughed and cried at the same time, which is really the only appropriate response when life gives you something that was worth all the pain it took to get there. They stood up together. He held her face. She held his, and he kissed her gently. Right there among her orange walls and her 4 queen tables, and her customers who had become witnesses to something they would tell their children about. They were married 4 months later. Not a big wedding. Miriam had never wanted a big wedding. She wanted a true one. They married at a small church in Surulere on a Saturday morning when the harmattan was blowing softly, and the sky was the particular pale gold color that Lagos sky sometimes turns in December, as if the city itself is trying to be beautiful for the occasion. Miriam wore a white dress that her mother, who had traveled from Asaba, healthier now, walking slowly but walking, had sewn herself over 3 weeks, with hands that shook from age but never made a single crooked stitch. Frances wore a simple dark suit and a white pocket square, and the expression of a man who had been through fire and come out the other side holding something he would never let go of. Jerry was there, tall now, almost finished with his secondary school, wearing a borrowed blazer and grinning so wide his face could barely contain it. Kenny was there in a shirt so freshly ironed it crackled when he moved. The 23 men from the Ashodi construction crew were there, every single one of them, sitting in the pews in their cleanest clothes. Big, rough men who had given a broken stranger cement blocks to carry and 1,500 naira a day, watching that same man marry the woman who had saved his life with a plate of rice. When the pastor asked if anyone had any objection to the marriage, the church was so quiet you could hear the harmattan moving through the windows. No one spoke. Of course, no one spoke. When Frances slid the wedding band onto Miriam's finger, next to the small gold engagement ring she had not taken off for 4 months, his hand was steady. Completely steady. The shaking was gone. Everything that had been broken in him had set properly, the way a bone sets when it is given enough time and care, stronger at the fracture point than it was before. "You may kiss your bride," the pastor said. Frances looked at Miriam for a moment before he did, just looked at her. And in that look was everything: the bridge, the rice, the rain, the long walks to the bus stop, the phone calls from Abuja, the orange walls, the ring on the restaurant floor, every single ordinary, extraordinary moment that had brought them to this place. Then he kissed her, and the church came alive. Outside the church, as they stepped into the December sunlight, rice grain rained down on them, not thrown by a wedding planner or a catering company, but by Miriam's own customers, her people from Ashodi, who had shown up on the street outside the church with their plastic cups and their sachets of rice, the very thing that had started it all, and they threw it into the air above the couple's heads like a blessing, like a prayer, like the most perfect ending to a story that had begun with one was decision not to keep walking. And Miriam laughed. She threw her head back and laughed in the sunlight, with rice raining down on her wedding dress and her mother crying behind her, and her husband's hand warm and real and permanent in hers. She laughed the way people laugh when they realize that the worst thing that ever happened to them was also the road that brought them exactly where they were supposed to be. And that was the whole story, really. Not the big dramatic moments, though there were those too. Not the betrayal, or the bridge, or the ministry contract, or even the restaurant. The story was this: two people who had been broken, who could have become hard, who chose instead to remain soft in a world that keeps asking you to harden. A woman who gave when she had nothing, and a man who received with enough grace to be changed by it. A kindness so small it fit in a bowl of rice, a love so large it filled a church in Surulere and spilled out into the December street. And the ordinary, extraordinary miracle that happens when you choose not to keep walking. Now, here is what this story wants to leave you with. There is something that Lagos, that life itself, tries to teach you that is not always true. It teaches you that you cannot afford to be kind, that stopping for a stranger is a weakness, that your own survival must always come first. And yes, you must survive. You must be wise. But Miriam's story and Francis's story is a reminder that the moments when we reach beyond our own hunger and press something small and real into another person's hand, those are the moments that define us. Not our successes, not our victories. The rice we give when we only have a little left. This story also teaches that betrayal is a fire. It can burn you down, or it can burn away everything that was not real, and leave behind only the truest parts of you. Francis lost money. He lost a woman. He lost a life he had carefully built. But what he found under that bridge was something no one could steal from him: the absolute rock-bottom truth of who he was when everything else was gone. And from that truth, he built something better. It teaches that pride can be the thing that keeps us from healing. Francis watched Miriam for days before he could bring himself to speak. He almost let shame keep him from a connection that was meant to find him. Shame is a heavy thing, but it is not permanent. And the person who sees past your shame and hands you rice anyway, hold on to that person. And for Miriam, the lesson is this: your dream is not too small. Your rice stand on the dusty Oshodi Road was not a failure. It was the foundation. Everything you build on top of it will carry the smell of those long days and those calloused hands, and every time you kept going when going seemed impossible. That is not something you can buy. It is something you earn with your life, and it is priceless. Do not let anyone tell you that where you are starting from is where you will end. Miriam started with a pot of rice and a borrowed table on a roadside. She ended with orange walls in a restaurant and a man who saw every part of her story and chose to stay. That kind of ending belongs to people who refuse to give up. May it belong to you too. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something real, if it reminded you of someone you know or something you have been through, please leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your favorite part. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Because you do not know whose life is waiting to be changed by exactly this kind of story at exactly this channel. Please do it now. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do it now. Every week, there's a new story waiting here for you. Stories of real people, real struggles, real miracles, and real love. Stories that remind you that this life, even when it is hard, is worth living all the way to the end. Thank you for watching.